Biggest burn in the history of sports that I've ever seen had to be Lane Kiffin leaving after 1 year when it comes to personnel moving around. However, you have to give Texas A&M's former coach of their baseball team a lot of credit because he just bolted A&M for Texas. What do you make of that burn, Caleb? That's about as bad as it gets.
This is absolutely horrible. So Texas A&M coach Jim Schlossnagle has left to take over Texas. And by the way, this was literally within 12 hours of him after the national title loss saying there is no place he'd rather be than Texas A&M. He's not going to leave for anywhere. He said, quote, "I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again." And within 12 hours, he took the Texas job. This is the most brazen, flipping to a rival gut punch, I think, in the history of college athletics. We can go through them, Dave, but, this has to be the worst, right?
I still think Lane Kiffin, after coaching 1 year, is the worst. I actually got
But he didn't leave for Alabama.
No, that's true. Texas to Texas A&M, needless to say, they're rivals. It may be the worst burn. What are some of the other worst personnel burns you remember? We could go way back, and Doug Dickey going to Florida would be one that probably most of our listeners don't remember, but a lot of people thought it was very questionable in the way he went to Florida, but not too questionable because Tennessee took him back.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Tennessee, Doug Dickey's last game as Tennessee head coach, they lost the Gator Bowl to Florida, and then he took the job at Florida, and many people think Doug Dickey might have thrown that Gator Bowl, just saying. But Tennessee-Florida wasn't a rivalry then. So, I mean, there's Rick Pitino going to Louisville after he left Kentucky for the NBA and coming back to Louisville, and there's obviously Nick Saban going to Alabama after he left LSU. And so those are the two most standout ones. But even those, I mean, they both went to the pros and then came back to a rival school. I have never seen this one. I've never seen it just blatant up and leave for the rival the next year.
Well, what about now? This isn't a rivalry, but Nick Saban did blatantly lie. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. Does it really hurt your reputation as a coach if you do stuff like this? I mean, he's a hypocrite. You're right.
I think you can't throw all character out the window because it does come back to bite you eventually. But that Saban lie was bad. Now, I will say this with the Saban situation. What do you do if you're Nick Saban at that point? Everybody knows you're interested in the Alabama job. They're asking you about it, but you're trying to keep your team focused to finish the season, aren't you? And so if you don't say I'm not going to be the Alabama coach, then you've really screwed your team. What would you have done in that situation if you were Nick Saban?
I don't believe in lying, so I wouldn't have lied. I would have just said I'm not going to comment on that.
Which immediately lets everybody know that you're going to Alabama. I mean,
but I just don't believe.
It's kind of like remember when Mike Hamilton was asked about Bruce Pearl's job security, and he said, "Well, it depends on the NCAA tournament."
Oh,
or said
I don't remember that. I don't remember that. That was not a wise thing to say.
Yeah, he said it was up in question right before Tennessee entered the NCAA tournament because he knew he was about to fire Bruce Pearl, but he couldn't say I'm not going to fire him. He wanted Tennessee to finish the NCAA tournament, but the minute he said I hadn't made a decision, everybody knew it was fired. So this one was just a clear-cut lie. I took the Texas A&M job to never take the Texas job again. I don't get it. To never take another job again. And I don't get it because, Dave, we cover NIL collectives. I feel like A&M could have opened the checkbook for him, right?
Yeah. Something's going on there. And somebody posted on the message board there's some personal families. I don't know about all that stuff. But after Tony Vitello won a championship, he hasn't been linked to any other jobs. Do you feel like he'll retire of all portions of the program? Brought to you by Newbert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
If you had a bet, a month's pay, a mortgage, Tony Vitello retires of all. By the way, you should always take the no bet on this with most coaches.
Yeah. I can't
Would you
bet
agree
that.
with that? That you would?
I can't bet. Sorry, what'd you say?
Would you agree that with most coaches, you should not take that they will retire at wherever they are, correct?
Yeah, you shouldn't usually take that bet. I totally agree.
I mean, who would have ever guessed that Les Miles would technically retire at Kansas one day?
That's
I mean,
very true.
Nobody saw that one coming.
So, look, people would bring up Missouri because he's from St. Louis and he played for the Tigers, but Missouri just had a coaching opening last year and they didn't hire him. And the only reason they wouldn't have hired him is if he didn't want the job. The only fear for me for Tony Vitello is the majors, because I think that Tony Vitello is the best scout in college baseball today. Just going to call it out, guys, for managing and coaching baseball. There's very little strategy that matters. It's being able to scout and evaluate the talent. And you can evaluate guys straight out of high school in baseball. Dave, I could see Tony Vitello becoming a GM of a Major League Baseball team within the next 5 to 10 years. That would be where he might leave for, because that's where the money's going to be. We talked about this the other day. I would spend all my money on a GM if I were a Major League Baseball president. I would not even care about a manager. I'd have a player coach. Okay, I would just spend all my money on a GM. And yeah, so that's the only thing that I think Tennessee should fear. I don't think he's leaving for a rival. He's not going to get Texas A&M'd.
We have a new feature. It's called a Q&A feature. So that's on our YouTube page right now. And we do want you to continue to vote for our poll question, which is who is more responsible for the Vols College World Series win? Donde Plowman, 31% of the vote. Danny White's coming down at 69% of the vote. But finish this sentence for me, Caleb, but I'm going to throw it at you first. I'd be worried about Tony Vitello leaving if
the St. Louis Cardinals came calling.
So not Missouri.
Not Missouri. He would have already left for Missouri. He would have left last year.
Right.
He turned it down.
Okay.
If the St. Louis Cardinals came calling, I'd be worried about Tony Vitello leaving.
Wow. But if the Dallas Cowboys came calling, you'd be worried about that. Wouldn't you be worried about Josh Heupel leaving too? I mean, you're talking about one of the best. Yeah.
Yeah. I would be worried.
What about something a little bit more realistic? Let me finish the sentence. I would be worried about Tony Vitello leaving if Danny White ever left. Because I think Tony Vitello knows that they have a similar vision. You disagree?
Totally disagree. Tony Vitello stayed through John Curry, and he stayed through Philip Fulmer, and then he stayed through Danny White.
That's a great point.
Yeah, no. Tony Vitello, if he leaves, he's going to the majors. It's period, end of story. Now,
how many guys, though, have gone from college to the majors that you could name?
I have no idea. I can't. I don't know major league managers like that.
Doesn't seem like a normal move, does it to you?
No. So yeah, I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be anything. Random question, kind of getting back, just thinking about this. Dave, was it a gut punch, do you think, for Auburn or Georgia, with Pat Dye, who played at Georgia coaching Auburn, and Vince Dooley, who played for Auburn coaching Georgia? They never left for the other school, but so that's not a gut punch the same as A&M losing their baseball coach, right?
No, I think the only comparison actually happened to Tennessee, and I know it's not the rival, but it's Lane Kiffin leaving after just 1 year with all the hype that he brought in. I think that's a comparison as far as gut punch. They're different gut punches, but they're right below the belly button where they really, really hurt.
That's a great point. It's not just leaving with Lane Kiffin. It's the fact that Lane Kiffin was building up Tennessee like they were doing something special. Well, he made a lot of headlines bragging about what they were building at Tennessee, didn't he? And
a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and put up on the message board right now. If you would like to take part, what is the worst gut punch? A&M coach leaving or Kiffin leaving? Who do you think will win that? I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now.
I think Kiffin, because also just football in general. Like, would you rather lose your football coach to a rival or your baseball coach to a rival? Like, would you rather Tony Vitello would you rather lose Tony Vitello to Alabama or Josh Heupel to Alabama?
Fair point. Hit like and subscribe now. We greatly appreciate it when you do that. We're with you each weekday at 10 a.m. Tomorrow on the program, an update on Tennessee's offensive line recruiting. They're big and they're good. I'll go ahead and tell you that, Caleb. So I'll put the over-under. If you don't think Tony Vitello, you're going to play the odds, will not retire a Vol, I'll put the over-under at 5.5 years. Over-under.
Ooh, Tony Vitello. I think he's gone in 5.5 years. I do. I think a major league team is calling Tony Vitello very soon, guys.
I think he's a lifer. I think he's going to retire.
He's the best. We're talking about the best coach in college baseball right now, by far. By far, if you ranked coaches, the best coaches in college baseball, you'd have Tony Vitello number one, light years ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, but see, I don't know how much of a Major League Baseball guy you are, but general manager maybe, but the manager is generally a dude that does like next to nothing. He's just
that's why I said general manager. Someone's going to open the checkbook for him to be a general manager.
That just seems like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You know, to me, I wouldn't control my own destiny. That would bother me, and I think Tony Vitello likes controlling his own destiny. Okay, so I will take the over because I think he's going to retire a Tennessee volunteer coach. But let me ask you again. So, I asked you this yesterday. You had Vitello winning under 1.5 more championships if I put the over.
Yeah, he's going to win one more. Matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and project his career. Over the next 4 years, he's going to win one more national title. His hometown St. Louis Cardinals are going to come calling. Then the St. Louis Cardinals are going to be like, hey, want to come home and be our general manager and do things the Cardinal way? And Tony Vitello, who was born in St. Louis, loves the Cardinal way, is going to be like, man, get to be general manager of the premier middle of the country Major League Baseball franchise outside of the New York Yankees, the most premier Major League Baseball franchise in history. Like, let's do it.
Portions of the program brought to you by Medicare Misty. I'll tell you what I think Tony Vitello is going to do in 30 seconds.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
10 more seasons, 2 more championships. That's what I've got for Tony Vitello. Our poll question brought to you by Apex Apparel Design. What's the worst gut punch? A&M coach leaving, Kiffin leaving. A&M coach winning at 85% to 15%. So you were right on that. Nailed it.
I was wrong. No, I thought they'd say Kiffin.
Okay, yeah, you were. Well,
you know what, though? Secretly, you know what? You know why? I think many Tennessee fans are secretly happy Kiffin left because of what Jimmy Hyam said earlier today. They think they'd be on probation if Kiffin stayed.